Kudjo, your Member of Parliament for Tobago West. Thank you for joining us on our second edition of Face to Face. Today, we look at the two internal self-government bills which are now before the Parliament for debate. So sit back, relax, join us on this journey as we make significant strides towards our internal self-government.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Face to Face with the Member of Parliament for Tobago West, the Honourable Minister Shamfa Kudjo. I am Glendora Lashley and I will be asking the MP about at this point, everything surrounding the Tobago bills. The bills on the Tobago self-government. There are two bills before the Parliament laid after the JSC has done its work, and we are now at the point where we're going to discuss some of the changes. We hope that you enjoy the conversation, and there will be some questions from some of the constituents of the MP here in Tobago West that she will be answering afterwards. Good afternoon, MP.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I am good. I have a question for you that's not yet about the Tobago bills. I saw on Friday, I think June 18th, you celebrated, or that marked 11 years of service as a politician, as an active politician.
I was first asked to join the Senate as a part of the opposition team in 2010 when we lost the elections. I was asked by leadership in the Tobago Council of the People's National Movement. At that time I was 28 years old and I accepted. So I was appointed on the 18th of June in 2010. So this marks 11 years as a frontline politician, as a member of Parliament, and I had even forgotten that it was 11 years. I got up and I saw on social media people saying congratulations and so on, and some people asked why celebrate it, why is it marked? Well, one, I didn't remember it this year, and for me it's an important milestone because when I entered I was only 28 years old and there were so many people saying that she is too young, she doesn't do her work in the vineyard, where this young girl come from, and that type of thing. During those times, people saw politics as something for people from a more wealthy background, people who have done a lot of labor and time in a specific political party, or you would have come from a family where your parents were involved in politics, and I wasn't any of that. I wasn't any of that. I was a young person who had gone abroad to do my studies and came back just willing to serve my country. I didn't have plans to be a politician. I was a youth activist with the Tobago Youth Council, which was non-political, and I spoke at a forum and I was asked to join the party.
You jumped in as a PNN senator in opposition.
In opposition, yes.
That's not the usual thing. People tend to go into government.
Exactly.
How was that experience for you?
Well, for me, it was an inspiring and enlightening experience. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy then, and it's not easy now, but I felt a strong sense of responsibility to showcase my island, to showcase that young people from Tobago can see politics as a part of their daily business, as a part of their development, and get involved in politics. And I wanted to encourage young people to know that this is not something difficult to do. You have a voice, you have a position. This is your business to get involved and be a part of the decision-making process in your country, whichever side of the divide you're from. And I just wanted more young people to be attracted to politics, and 10 years later, every time a new young person come on board, whether they're with my party or with another party and they're from Tobago, I'm always very excited because I feel like, God, it was really lonely for me at first, because I was the youngest person, as a young woman coming from Tobago, and that in itself had its own challenges. But now there are so many young people and young women coming on board, and whether they support my party or support me or not, the fact is we have young Tobagonians out there making their mark, having their voices heard, and Tobagonians are warming up to politics or getting more involved, and that makes me really excited. So yeah, I celebrate 11 years. I've been through a lot of challenges. I've been the subject of all kinds of attacks and so on over the years, personal, political, and I have learned and grown so much from it. So I celebrate every bit of it. I know that the road is long and hard, and it's more difficult and trying times to come, but I embrace the journey and the strength that it has given me.
So, having said that, let's come to the bills now. You've had that significant experience, and no one can take that away from you. Many people see you simply as a PNM politician, right? And many are seeing these two bills as the PNM's attempt to control the Tobago agenda. You, yes, you're a PNM politician, but you just made it abundantly clear that you're also a Tobagonian and a Tobagonian woman who started off as a young female. Do you think that these bills are, in fact, the PNM's attempt to control Tobago, as the people put it?
Well, first and foremost, I don't want to speak about this from the perspective only as a PNM politician, but more so as a Tobagonian. I returned home from college in 2008, and at that time I was unemployed and was pretty much tagging along everywhere my Auntie Gracie went. And she was going to a PNM Tobago Council meeting at Bishop's High School somewhere in November of 2008, and she said, would you come with me? And when I went, the conversation on the floor was about internal self-government for Tobago. And I said, wow, this thing is really serious, it's really heavy, because I remember when I was leaving Tobago in 2002, Ho Charles was speaking about internal self-government around that time, and even a little before 2002. I think it was the elections of 2001. So I remember hearing the conversation, but not fully catching on. You heard the passion, you heard the anger, but you didn't fully get the picture. But when I came back and I sat in that meeting, that PNM meeting in 2008, I'm like, okay, this is heavy, it is still going on, this thing's still going on, boy, and I made it my business to be a part of the consultations before it got to the parliament. So 2008, 2009, 2010, I remember attending the consultations. I remember when we had the representative from St. Kitts Nevis at the meeting at Works Conference Room. So I don't remember missing any of those consultations. If I did, I didn't miss more than 2 or 3. When the John Prince committee and the committees went to Trinidad to do the consultations, I went with them to UE. Right. So I had gotten so excited about this conversation and what Tobagonians were about to accomplish. And I think it got even better, and I got more excited when Ho Charles came on board, and the Tobago Forum of Political Parties decided, hey, we're going to talk to Trinidad with one voice. And you had people from all sides of the divide just coming out and having their say. And I sat at a forum next to people like Crystal Case, Deborah Moore McGinn.
So you're calling a lot of names there that are not PNM people.
Yeah, then you had Dr. Maka. You had so many people who were on board and passionate. Even when former Reginald Dumas handed over his work to the committee to make so that his committee's work could be considered. Fargo House. It was a really exciting time for Tobagonians, and as you go from place to place, the crowd grew and people just had their way, and it was never about everybody. It was more about consensus rather than being unanimous. There was no one point that everybody said, yeah, we fully on board, didn't have any questions. We asked our questions and everybody just came out and had their say. So then we brought on board as an opposition senator, and then a member of parliament in 2015, and then placed on the Joint Select Committee, the first edition of the Joint Select Committee in 2018. I felt that sense of responsibility to bring this thing to life, and I entered that JSC with a passion, and I kept saying, well, I was there and this is what the people want. And,
So if you fast forward to now, there was another JSC in a sense. And again, sticking on the issue, because this is a point that several Tobagonians are concerned about, whether or not these bills are simply PNN politics. Right? The JSC now, speak to the membership of the JSC, because many of your constituents won't know.
Yeah, I think that is important, and that is why I was heading in that direction of getting on the committee and thinking, well, because I'm Tobagonian, the JSC should just take what I said, and because I was there, they should just take everything that I said, and that wasn't so. You had members from the government, members from the opposition, and independent senators being a part of the committee, and we had to go back to scratch. What is this internal self-government thing that the people of Tobago say they wanted? We had to bring back the forum, and when we sit on that committee, it's not that you're a PNM member, you're a UNC member. No, you would listen to when we introduce ourselves, we say Shamfa Kojo, member.
Correct.
Yes, Rudy Ndarsing, member. Yes, and you address the situation and all the matters before you as a member of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, trying to make the very best of the legislation, to do the necessary research, the investigation, to call in witnesses and ask people for their contribution and really examine each part of it with your political shades off.
But people don't seem to believe, I don't know, we are in a space where people are highly critical of politicians. So even now, that these bills, well, it was the original bill that went to the GSC, and now at the end of that process, we've come out of it with two pieces of proposed legislation. The general feeling you get on the ground is that that's a PNM thing. People don't seem to believe that the other members of the GSC actually had a part to play.
Okay. I think that people who want to politicize it, or people who don't want to see it go anywhere, everybody would have their concerns and everybody would have their positions and perspectives. But if you look to the process and what it really means to form a JSC and what a JSC is established to do and what happens on the JSC, and the fact that right now in this current times, on the heels of a THA election, we are so politically polarized now more than ever. When we started this committee in March 2018, our first business was to bring the Tobago Forum to the Parliament for several meetings for them to explain to us, what is this that you've presented to us, and to find out, what do you want from us. So they asked us to go out and seek from the international community of experts, different jurisdictions, the legal heads and so on, to bring some sense, to bring some clarity, to bring some explanation to what is this thing that Tobago wants. And it's important to note that what was submitted to the Parliament was amendments to the Constitution. So even though we had in 1996 Act number 39, which dealt with changing the Constitution, and Act number 40, which is the Tobago House of Assembly Act, all the amendments that were proposed in one document to amend the Constitution. And as you know, as anybody knows, you can't put everything in the Constitution. Hence the reason that was not done in 1980. Hence the reason that was not done in 1996. Why we have Act number 40, the THA Act.
Right.
Yeah, and then you have Act number 39 to change the Constitution. So that was the first thing. We now have to look at this thing to see, okay, what suits to go in the Constitution and what's suitable for a regular bill or regular act. So anyway, we went on our way to come to Tobago in June 10th, 2018, and we had a consultation and we engaged the Tobago public. You had 12 oral submissions then. You had people like Fali Augustine, who was at that consultation. You had people like former Chief Secretary Kelvin Charles, Vanish James, you name it. They came out in their numbers. Tobagonians came out in their numbers and had their say. And if you compare that consultation to now, half the matters being raised now were not raised then. This whole secession argument that I'm now hearing about that was not raised then. The matter of the 15 seats was a part of what the Tobago House of Assembly had sent to us from coming out of those same consultations. It wasn't a problem then. Everybody was on board, but now you're hearing some people, based on what has happened in the election in January, are now saying differently in this 11th hour. So our business as the Joint Select Committee is not to respond to the political happenings to say, okay, it's pro PNM, it's pro PDP, or if we do this, no, it's to develop the best piece of legislation to treat with the situation that we're dealing with and to fulfill the mandate that was given to us. And that mandate was to maintain the unitary state, devolving powers and authorities to the Tobago House of Assembly towards autonomy for the people of Tobago, equality of status for the people of Trinidad and the people of Tobago, and that is what the committee was mandated to do. So now you hear a whole host of issues jumping out of the woodwork saying, why didn't you consider this? Why didn't you consider that? That was not the mandate given to the committee, so it wasn't under the committee's remit. And I remember clearly being a part of those consultations. And even being a member of the committee, Tobagonians did not ask for secession.
Right.
You know, so to try to slip that in or to foist that on us now, that's unfortunate.
So you made an important distinction there, in the sense that the work of the GSC is to consider what was sent before the Parliament.
Yes, and do the research and consult the experts. So we reached out to the St. Kitts Nevis administration, Tanzania, Canada. We reached out to different countries, the Scottish Parliament, that had experience just like we did. We were asked to reach out to the United Nations, and we spent a lot of time with the United Nations discussing this whole matter of boundaries, of unicameral versus bicameral, or one chamber versus two chamber parliament or House of Assembly, and so on. So we were sent to do the research and to get the information. Tobagonians would have said what they felt, what they prefer, what they aspire to, and all this emotion and all these aspirations were placed in a document. Now we had to go out there and do the research and come back to Tobagonians. So we came back to Tobagonians in June of 2018, and more questions were raised. So we were sent back, go back and do more homework. So we called back in UNDP, we called in EBC, Ministry of Finance, you name it, and they gave their comments on the issues. So when we did the work, and in August of 2020, when we were going to close, and the term of the previous government was coming to an end, people were saying, why don't you bring the bill, you're taking too long with the bill, what's taking you so long? And I remember saying, we need to be patient because it's a lot of work to be done. And I got bashed in all kinds of political circles because I said, hey, we need to be patient because we want to get this as right as possible. But there was work to be done, and we had to go through clause by clause. And everybody, no matter who you are, whether you a big name politician or a man on the side of the street, once you sent a comment to that committee, we went through it line by line, clause by clause, and considered every single comment that was brought before us. So we felt like the work was not completed. We needed some more time with the responses from the United Nations, and we decided to save the work of the Committee of the 11th Parliament in August of 2020, to save that work so that when whichever government wins the election at that point in time, we didn't know we would have won the election. Whichever government wins the election, they would be moved to recognize, hey, the former parliament did significant work, they didn't want to lose it, they went to parliament and asked for the permission to save the work, so it would form a foundation for the work in the 12th parliament. Okay. So you had new members in the 12th parliament, so when we started again in November, that's the committee that you now have on board. So you no longer have people like Ramona Ramdial or Saddam Hussein on that one. Those are from the 11th parliament. So the 12th parliament now has new members.
Right. So you talked a bit about the composition of the GSC, past and present, as well as some of the things that inform the changes to the bill. That there's a lot of that, and I'm pretty sure that all of this is on the Parliament's website. People can actually go and check it out, because we had a situation where prior to this being the trending topic now, when there was the move by the Parliament to take out 15 seats to amend the constitution so that that can trigger a THA election. You had a bunch of people in Tobago asking where they get 15 seats from. Unfortunately, it appeared as well some of those said people were part of the process, but that didn't happen. So people can't access the bill, all of this information that you're talking about here, in terms of stakeholder contributions and all of that. It is on the Parliament's website.
Everything is online. Even the work of the 11th Parliament, that's fleshed out online. The work of the 12th Parliament, which is this current Parliament, fleshed out online. All the comments from the stakeholders, the opinions from the legal authorities and the experts, it's all available online. And that was one thing I was very adamant about on the committee. Airing all the issues, all the opinions, ventilating all the issues so that Tobagonians can understand why we took this decision or why we didn't go with this specific option. So that was really, really important. Now, there's a point I wanted to raise. When we came back to Tobago in 2020, on April 30th and May 1st of 2020, we would have circulated the legislation from as early as April 17, 2 weeks ahead, to the different offices of the MPs, to the wharf, the airport, the libraries, everywhere, also online, so that Tobagoans could have that opportunity. For those who missed the opportunity the first time to submit comments, like for instance, you hear the PDP making all this noise now. They were called and they were asked to submit in the last calling in 2018, submit comments on this matter when we came to Tobago first in 2018, and they did not. And even when we came to Tobago, Fadi Augustine was a part of the consultations, he was there, and even after that, we didn't get comments from the PDP. What's due, the PSA submitted comments, but not the PDP. So it's really interesting to see in the last month of the life of the committee that the PDP now submits this 100 and something page document asking for these different changes and so on that were not mentioned, now talking about secession and so on. But that's a different story, and I think the people of Tobago will determine whether that makes sense or not. But it's important to understand how the committee went about its business. When we submitted the first draft, the draft for the April 30th discussion, that's simply coming out of the research done and different recommendations from the experts. So there wasn't a real drilling down of each clause or political contribution and consideration really to that. That's looking at the advice of the experts and choosing one to go back as a base for discussion. You understand what I'm saying? So for instance, the United Nations Development Program and the other experts would have said to us a unicameral system is best because X, Y, or Z, it's less costly. We think that you could achieve the same objectives as a bicameral system. In a unicameral system, the EBC said that the way of getting the second house that was proposed in the 2016 bill to do it by parishes, they said that doing it by parish, doing an election by parishes in Tobago would not have made sense because one, the parishes superimposed, and the way the population is distributed across the parishes, it would be something difficult to do. And really thinking you're going to get an independent house that way, we are so polarized politically, you would not get that level of independence. People are still going to vote along party lines. And when we look at what the Scottish Parliament and the Northern Ireland legislature and what the legislatures that were proposed to us by the Tobago Forum of Parties were doing, they were unicameral. So we recommended unicameral and so on. So we looked at recommendations from the experts, and in some cases we would have adopted a whole clause or a whole paragraph from somebody else's legislation as a form of as a place to have the discussion.
Okay.
Yeah. So people say, wow, a lot of changes made from April 30th to now. That's because after April 30th, we then went in clause by clause, comment by comment, lining up the comments of those who submitted comments to us next to the bills or the draft the bills and going in line by line. I'm talking about 5, 6, 7 hour meetings 2, 3 times a week, you know. So a lot of drilling took place then, reaching back out to the EBC, reaching out to the UNDP again, reaching out to legal experts, and really considering every single comment and drilling in, trying to get it right.
Interestingly enough, you are on record as asking for Tobagoans to have time to do this. As a matter of fact, your political opposition, you know, they have used your words quoted in the minority report.
Okay.
When I listen to you and we look at what's happening here in Tobago, especially in Tobago West, this is a lot of reading, a lot of things to understand. Yes. You've called for more time. Unfortunately, it's not like we have enough time. What do you then say to your constituents and Tobagoans in general in terms of trying to understand this?
Sure. Let's put it in context. I recognize that I was mentioned in the minority report, and it's a really interesting thing because it goes to show that these meetings of the Joint Select Committee, as PNM dominated as you think it was, we didn't agree on everything. And there were some items we say, stick a pin there, we have to come back to that because this requires more conversations, more debate, more research, or no, I would not rest with this point. I need more. I need to find out exactly why the AG is recommending X, Y, or Z. Or simply saying that this legal expert said X, Y, or Z is not sufficient to me. I want to know, flesh it out to me, explain it to me. Don't talk to me in legalese. Don't tell me that I cannot have 6 miles when I've had 6 miles for 25 years and it doesn't cause us any harm. So yes, the legal experts are saying to us clearly, no, I wouldn't recommend that to us, but I'm saying 25 years have passed and it didn't cause us any harm, so let's keep going until something happens, and if something happens, then we change. So you know, so you had that kind of conversation.
But we both saw that's the spicy part of the MP coming out there, you know, arguing in-house about the fine touches of the bill.
Right.
But you raise a very, very important aspect there, because how many people will actually follow on and understand why it couldn't happen?
Right, you see, that comment was also from that April 30th, May 1st consultation in Tobago, and I was pointing out to the AG, hey, Farley is making the same point, and so is Ingrid Melville from the PNM side making the same point, that if we have had 6 miles for the past 25 years administratively, and those 6 miles were administratively, then I understand what you're saying by not putting it in the Constitution. But if we've had it administratively and it has caused us no harm in the past, that means that we can do it this time around in the spirit of the Tobago House of Assembly Act. Yeah, we could do it administratively. And then after you get the 6 miles back on, then you say, well, if you're going to give me 6 miles, then you give me 7. You give me 8. You know what I'm saying? We really didn't want to do things arbitrarily. We wanted to get the advice of the legal experts. So in all honesty, and when you look at the advice from legal experts, they're saying, hey, if you are saying you want to maintain the unitary state, then we do not advise that you put this in your constitution. Because you remember the proposals that were sent to us from the Tobago House of Assembly was to put everything, amend the constitution. So they're saying, they're recommending that you put it in the constitution. But if you want to maintain the unitary state, considering that you're an archipelagic state, considering your international obligations, if you are keeping the unitary state, then you should not put this in your constitution. However, if you want to do something, make an arrangement separately for administrative jurisdiction, then if you have to, you should, but it's really something we don't really recommend. You know, so the legal Ambassador Thompson had a different view, but even in providing his advice, he said that, hey, I don't really recommend this, but if you must, you know. And then you had Justice Lucky and QC Batt, I think or meeting with QC Batt, QC Delano Batt and Ms. Ida Eversley. That was a major turning point for us That happened somewhere late in May. I think it was May 25th or May 28th, because those of us within the committee saying, hey, this miles matter does not sit right with us. This must be resolved. There must be a way to do it administratively. But whilst the AG is open to taking the advice of his legal seniors and people who gave him this advice and gave us this advice, yes, he wants to play it safe. But we're saying we've had 6 months for the past 25 years and it has done us no harm, and that was administratively, and it doesn't take away it doesn't take away from us to continue in that vein, right, and even consider doing more. So hence we ended up at the 11 miles, especially after getting the assistance of QC Bat and Miss Eversley in the consultation, and that advice is also available online, so people who want to go in and really dig to see what the legal luminaries had said, you could go online and find all the information online. So that was in April. I said that April 30th, May 1st, and since then I was very happy on May 28th when we made that change. And when QC Bat and Miss Eversley came on and gave the advice and directed the committee, and I'm happy that we were able to move to that direction. Even then, on the committee, there were some members still saying, but why? If we are being advised not to do it, why are we doing it? You know what we're saying? We feel confident with the advice that was given to us by the legal luminaries, so we're going to go in that direction, and we are not looking at secession, so we're not putting it in the Constitution, because the advice given to us said, don't put it in the Constitution if you're about maintaining a unitary state, knowing very well that was not the conversation or the desire of the people of Tobago when we engaged them over the years. So we did all that we could to maintain the unitary state.
One thing though, just as an aside, although the JSC is mandated to look at what was presented to them, if the overwhelming response was in fact we want secession, what would have happened with the GSC then?
Then you wouldn't come to a position of saying you want secession then. That would take a serious amount of consultation. You have to remember these talks did not start yesterday. John Prince Committee was formed in 2007. And by the time John Prince submitted his final report to the Tobago House of Assembly in September of 2011, I think it was September 2nd, 2011, he had already done 42 consultations and 3 larger conferences. That is from 2007 to 2011, and then this position was sent to the Trinidad Parliament, the Trinidad and Tobago Parliament, to the cabinet, right? And it was ignored. Remember, the UNC in 2012, 2013 came up with their own position. Right. There was no consultation like it's being done now. There was no JSC like it's being done, that was done now in this current administration and our last 2010 to 2015 to 2020 stint. Yes, so that work sort of got thrown away, and that is where Orville London, then Chief Secretary, and Richard Charles, former Chief Secretary, said, hey, let's get together and speak to Tobago with this one voice, because you see all this work we did over the years, we're not going to let it go to waste. Okay. So that reignited a fire and touched the length and breadth of Tobago, where people from all sides of the divide came out, and we spoke to maintaining the unitary state and granting internal self-government through more authority and more autonomy for the Tobago House of Assembly, Tobago Island government. So to try to piggyback on that consultation, asking for secession, then that, to me, that is selfish and it's irresponsible. If you are saying Tobagonians want secession now, then you have to go do your homework. You have to go out there and do the consultation and get from Tobagonians far and wide. Do you want secession? Do you understand what secession would mean for you right now? Are we prepared for secession right now? What is our exit plan? Just like we showed what our plan was for increased autonomy and authority and drafted legislation accordingly, and show what our economic situation, try our best to show our economic situation, then what's your secession plan? What's your exit strategy? What is your, and you hear a lot of people saying, don't worry man, we gonna make it. Okay, where is your we gonna make it plan?
So let's back up a bit, because I suppose the first part of that will be defining Tobago. In the bills, we have a definition for Tobago of some sorts, but nothing for Trinidad. Why?
No definition for Trinidad, because one, Trinidad didn't ask for internal self-government, and two, you had Tobago asking for internal self-government. And if you're looking at defining Tobago, defining Trinidad, that means you're looking at having two separate states. We are one unitary state, and then that means you're looking more towards a conversation about federalism. We did not. Federalism would require not just consulting Tobagonians about what we want, it would also speak to consulting Trinidad about what they want. Right. So with federalism, what is mine, and what is yours, and then we would contribute some to the national treasury, and the national running of the country. And at that point in time, I remember the objective or the position was not to engage Trinidad on what is Trinidad is Trinidad's. We were interested in internal self-government for Tobago based on our political and economic history and our cultural history, internal self-government for Tobago, and not engaging Trinidad in a I keep mine, you keep yours type of system. If later on in our journey we get to that point of federalism and then secession, then that would take planning and consultation and getting Tobagonians fully on board. But I think it's uncouth, irresponsible, selfish even, to try to piggyback on a conversation and consultation and process that was geared towards maintaining the unitary state, to then foist on the people talks about secession. Did you talk about them about what they would lose in this whole secession plan? We talk about being in a position to maintain ourselves due to energy resources and so on. Where are we as it relates to infrastructure developed to really process and monetize these energy resources and so on? And that would take some thinking. A secession conversation is a very heavy one that requires proper planning, a great level of readiness from all the people of Tobago, and you have to have a plan for it. We're gonna make it, it's not a plan. We have to get down to the economics and leave some of the emotions behind. It's like if you're building a house, let's look at it. If you're building a house, and I'm living in a small house in Mason Hall. I'll take my family journey. We're living in a small house in Mason Hall. Our family started off with 3 children, and then, oh my God, we're up to 7. We're going to need a bigger house. We're moving to Bethel. We've built we're building a house in Bethel. We have a plan as to what we want it to be, yes, but we don't have everything in it yet. You have the plan, you have access to the money and so on to get to where you want to be. However, you're not getting all the money one time. Do you tell the bank that, hey, because I'm not getting my dream house, I'm just leaving this whole thing behind? I would stay in my hut or stay in my small house with my 7 children. Yeah? No, we're gonna take the house and we're gonna take what we get from the bank now, the best that we possibly get from the bank now, and we will continue to build. So we started off living downstairs. We're in our new house though. We're in a new house, and the children have a room, have their own rooms, and now you're building and you're building and you're building out. And when you look at the journey of the Scottish of Scotland, it wasn't in any one full swoop. Yeah, it's a journey. I think we've been having a destination only conversation, right, where this is what we want and we're not taking anything else other than that. But you want to maintain a unitary state but employ secession strategy. It's confusing.
One of the things though for the people, because I'm sure you will have constituents who believe in secession, right? That Tobago is
a minority. We must.
Well, you may have them, and if you were to engage them on a discussion on secession, in this same way you talk about the journey. But for those people who say, forget that, we go fend for ourselves. You're a politician, notwithstanding that you've had responsibility for things at central government level. But when you look at the reality of the economy of the island state that is Tobago, if these people who believe in secession were in fact in the majority at this point, and they said, this is what we want, take it or leave it, and we went that way, where do you see yourself in this mix? Because at the end of the day, we're looking at all of the things that you just raised. Where will the financing come from? You know, and I want you to, I don't want to ask you questions, I want you to answer and tell me, because you're a politician looking at this here. I know what I think about it, but let's say that people came and they said, that's it, secession, that's what we want right now. If you are, let's say, at government level and you look at the island, what happens to Tobago in 2 months after secession?
I think this is sounding very much like a Brexit situation, where the leaders who were the proponents of the whole Brexit development got people on board based on an emotional argument. Yes, without setting out to the people, explain to them what they would lose and what this would really mean to them, and now they found themselves in some economic challenges. I think secession, I respect the desire of the people. Yes, but it shouldn't be something foisted upon us or forced upon us by somebody for political expediency because it sounds good. Yeah, and at the end of the day, you have to have a plan. It cannot be an emotional argument. It has to be an economic argument. Yeah, we have to think about where are we right now. We're thinking about leaving. Yeah, if that is the desire. Because everybody all over the world have that right to self-determination and fulfilling their aspirations, whatever they want for themselves. So if we do consultations and the leaders in Tobago recognize, hey, Tobagoans are calling for secession, then I think as responsible leaders, we have to discuss, explain, and educate our people about the secession plan, what this would mean economically, what this would mean as it relates to the country that we have built together, the opportunities that we have been able to access in Trinidad and in Tobago. How would this change our daily lives? And is this something we think we could take on right now in one clean swoop? Or is this something that we want to do step by step, as has been the journey of many other nations that we are looking to for guidance in this regard? So I am not here to bash the desires of anyone or even the advice of anyone. I'm just saying we shouldn't do it emotionally and irresponsibly. We have to have an intelligent conversation with our people as to what this would really mean to us, and timing is important too. Maybe we are at a point right now where we can use this new legislation that is being proposed to strengthen our economy, to strengthen our strategy, to strengthen our infrastructure, to prepare ourselves for an even greater step in the direction of federalism or secession, if we are saying that that is what the people want. But I want us to be prepared, and I want us to gird ourselves as we go out there to do whatever it is that we desire to do, and we shouldn't do so prematurely or unpreparedly.
Fair enough.
Yeah?
So let's pull it back a bit to where we actually are now with the bills and so on. Much like the previous piece of legislation that was passed in the Parliament with a simple majority, the EBC will need to do some work if this bill is passed. There are several Tobagonians across the island who feel like this particular bill manipulates the EBC to change the boundaries. Well, this one or even the one before, we're going to have 15 seats either way, right? And there are those who feel as if this is just a manipulation to allow for the PNM to win the THA, the Tobago House of Assembly election. What do you have to say to that? Because this 15 seats is in fact in this piece of these bills, and it's also passed already in the parliament.
Now the members of the Joint Select Committee didn't roll out their beds one day and say, hey, let's give them 15 seats. 15 seats. That 15-seat proposal came from the Tobago Forum of Political Parties based on the consultation with Tobagoanians saying what Tobago wants. So that was a part of the 2016 bill. When we came back in 2018 for consultation, it was still a part of the proposal that was placed before the people, and it was not a problem there at that time. Yeah, it's only in 2021, after the 6-6 situation, you're hearing people now having a problem with what they had proposed since 2016, before the 6-6 thing was ever in sight. You know, so to me, that's a political argument for those who think that Tobagoanians are not reading, are not listening, and are not educated enough to decipher sense from nonsense. Yes, at the end of the day, the Election and Boundaries Commission has to do its work based on the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. Over the years, we've seen in the Trinidad scheme of things where you had 18-18, that's when you had 36 seats. And the Election and Boundaries had to go out there and do its work to increase it to 41 seats. Could have been 37, could have been 39, could have been a different odd number, but it was increased to 41 seats based on what they would have considered then and based on the law then. So now you have new law to increase to 15 seats based on the conversation, the discussions, the consultations, asking for greater representation and so on since 2016. So to say the EBC would make changes to favor the PNM, that is nonsense to me, because it is the same EBC that has been presiding over all elections for as long as we can remember. We've had international observers come in and oversee the work of the EBC, and it has passed every grade. Yes, and everybody that has challenged the EBC, has gone to court to challenge the EBC, has lost over the years. So to try to say that of the EBC, no, the EBC would do something for the political gain of any one political party is total nonsense to me, because it's the same EBC that we used when the UNC had won. It's the same EBC that we used, that we ended up with the 6-6, and it's the same EBC that you see ARIMA in the local government election going from PNM to UNC. It's the same EBC. On those nights the EBC was praised, you know. So for me, it's a conversation of politics and people playing smart with foolishness.
So previously you spoke to the previous iteration with respect to the THA Act. There was Act 39 to amend the Constitution, and Act 40, which is the THA Act. It's similar now in the bills, right? You have the one to amend the Constitution and one that will be the Tobago Island Government or Island Administration legislation. People are asking, can one be passed without the other?
Yes, one can be passed without the other, because the Constitution Amendment Bill requires a 3/4 majority in the lower house and a 2/3 majority in the upper house. Yes, so the upper house is the Senate, the lower house is the House of Representatives. In the House of Representatives, we have 22 seats. The PNM has 22 seats, and we are going to surely vote in support of this bill for internal self-government for Tobago. But 22 is not enough. 3/4 of the House means 31 seats, 31 votes. We have only 22. That means we have to convince 9 opposition members to vote for the Constitution Amendment Bill. In the Senate, we have 15 seats. You need 21 votes for it to pass in the Senate, the Constitution Amendment Bill. That means we have to get 6 more votes from either the independents or the opposition. So that's the Constitution Amendment. The Tobago Island Government Bill, which replaces the Tobago House of Assembly Act, requires a simple majority, just like the old Tobago House of Assembly Act. So therefore, the THA, or should I say the TIG, the Tobago Island Government Bill, which speaks to the operations and functions and so on, requires a simple majority, so we are sure that that can and will be passed. However, it wouldn't make sense to pass one without the other, because they are so interrelated and they depend on each other. They are companion bills. So you need the entrenchment in the Constitution of some of the provisions and proposals. So it would make sense to have both bills.
Because that's the interesting part at this point. And if we were to make a projection into the future, it is very likely that the scenario, which doesn't make complete sense at all, may just happen, in the sense that we can have the Tobago Island Government Bill 2021 passed without the necessary amendments to the Constitution.
I think the best thing for us to do, and for all Tobagonians in Tobago who have friends in Trinidad and who have friends in the UNC and who have friends on the bench of independent senators, to convince them, especially in the lower house, to convince the UNC MPs, convince the opposition MPs to support this bill. Because if it's one thing you're sure about, is that the 22 MPs, the People's National Movement MPs, the government MPs, under the leadership of Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, we are voting for that bill, for those bills. So we need the opposition to come on board.
Let me ask you then, we're going into scenario, I suppose some sort of scenario guessing here, because we're not planning anything. If the Tobago Island Government Bill is passed, or we can even say when it is passed, because the support is there, how does that look like after these things get debated in Parliament if the amendment to the Constitution isn't passed?
It's going to
Does this automatically replace the THA Act?
It would automatically replace the THA Act, but it's going to be hard to operate without the entrenchment in the Constitution, because these two bills depend on each other so greatly. Just like Act 39 and Act 40 of 1996. So we were really hoping to get the support for both bills, and we're hoping that Tobagonians far and wide can encourage the UNC and the opposition to come on board and give that necessary support. I think that this is the time to get this done. I don't foresee another government encouraging or even getting its MPs from Tobago and Trinidad to support this type of autonomy and authority for Tobago. There are Trinidadians in the opposition, independents, and also in the PNM, I'm sure, who already think that the Tobago people are getting too much. The Tobago House of Assembly is getting too much. Yes, they already believe that. But under this Prime Minister, this cabinet, and this government, we are supporting this. We have to support this. We have done our homework, we've studied this thing, and we are supporting this. And I don't know of another Prime Minister who would push this internal self-government matter like this, to get it through the Joint Select Committee, to go about to do the consultation, and to try to do for Tobago many of the things that were promised years gone by that hadn't been done. Simple things like I shouldn't say simple because it took us so many years to get them. The ferry. Trinidad and Tobago actually owning 2 ferries to make inter-island transportation better. Yes, the investment in the airport. These things had been promised for 20, 30 years. And for the first time you have a Prime Minister from Tobago making it happen. The development in the east, development in the west, trying to get sandals here and so on. These are things that we had lobbied for and cried out for years. I left college and came back with the same cries at the forefront, but it's happening now. And I think that we need to embrace this opportunity and get the very best that we can out of this journey towards our destination. You know, so it's not just about getting it past the Joint Select Committee, you know. The Joint Select Committee is only 12 of the 41 members in the House to be convinced.
Right.
Yes? So getting it past the Joint Select Committee is one thing. Getting all the support of the PNM is another, the 22 members. But you need 31 votes in that lower house to pass bills.
Well, I guess we will see how the Tobagonians react and whether or not Tobagonians believe that this is something that is worth fighting for. However, I have a few questions from some of your constituents that I want to slip in here before we close off. First off, somebody is asking, do you think that the bills will be passed?
I hope that the bills will be passed. I'm mostly a woman, and I can foresee what's going to happen come next week when we go to the parliament to debate. I know what I can guarantee is the support of every PNM MP, every government MP in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. I can't speak for the opposition, and I can't speak for the opposition. The opposition already has circulated a minority report saying there wasn't enough consultation. If there is anything in this country that has been consulted, that has been brought to the people for consultation, years of consultation, is this matter of internal self-government for Tobago. Yes, from as early as the John Prince Committee in 2007, even to the wider consultations that took place between 2014 and 2016 in Tobago and in Trinidad. I don't know of another bill, another piece of legislation, not even a country's independence had been debated like that, where any and everybody could have their say and it really be considered. So the consultations have been going on for 14 years, and this matter is still before us. So I really hope that we're able to seize the opportunity and get the gains that are before us right now and continue the journey. When I became a senator in 2010, I had a talk with Rennie Dumas. Rennie Dumas, may his soul rest in peace, and he said, democracy and development, you have to fight for each and every day, because when you accomplish one thing, there is more road ahead of you to run. There's more to be done. There's always more to be done. As the days go by, you want more power, you want more authority, you want deeper democracy, and you want more development. So it never ends. Yes? So we're developing legislation now for good times and for bad times, for good governance and for those who are tempted to practice bad governance. It's about the basic principles, and we are getting those things accomplished through this piece of legislation, or some of it at least. I say let's seize the opportunity and continue the journey, having Tobagonians fully on board. If Tobagonians really feel that they want secession, then the leaders of Tobago who are proponents of secession have a duty to go out there and have an intelligent and responsible conversation, showing us a plan, showing us that exit plan, showing us what's going to happen.
Another part here is, why are there calls to reject the bill in totality, and what are your thoughts on that?
Calls to reject the bill. As I said, we live in a very politically polarized country, and you have people who think that, okay, if this bill is passed now, the PNM will get the praise. Yes? Not thinking that this is the work of Tobagonians from all sides of the divide. This is a Tobago bill. This is not a PNM situation or UNC situation or PDP situation. This is a journey, a fight, a battle. This is the work of Tobagonians. So no matter what side of the divide you come from, more autonomy to the Tobago House of Assembly would help every single Tobagonian. So we need to see it as that. There are people who have old political grudges, who want it done a specific way, or because they are not leading the charge, they don't want to see it come to the fore. There are some people who are deliberately miseducating Tobagonians, yes, and misleading Tobagonians. They know that some of the things that they are proposing, like secession right now, may not be the best thing for Tobago, considering where we are at in our development. But they continue to do so because it sounds good. It gives them a mic to speak on and some spotlight, and you have some political gains from it. Some people think it will cause them to win the next election by hyping up Tobagonians to say, hey, let's break off from Trinidad. No, don't worry, we're going to make it. You know, and that is very unfortunate. Another interesting thing is that I see the UNC in Trinidad playing their politics right. They are using the PDP in Tobago, or hiding behind the PDP, to get their political message and their political objectives across. I say that because over the years you would have heard in the parliament the concerns raised by the UNC that Tobago is getting too much. The Tobago House of Assembly is getting too much. These Tobagonians are lazy. And all that we would have heard from Satmaraj and the likes and the people in the UNC on the opposition side. Yes, they think that this is too much for Tobago, but they can't come out and say so. They won't come out and say so. So it's now easy to hide behind the PDP saying this is not what Tobagonians want, or there wasn't enough consultation. It's a safe place for the UNC to be. But we know very well it was just December when we as a government faced the parliament asking for $300 million for the Tobago House of Assembly to be able to borrow up to $300 million. And the UNC Representative Fomiaro said that was too much for Tobago, that they are not responsible enough, that they shouldn't have that. So if we can't have the ability to borrow $300 million, the UNC opposed to that, are they going to support this request to borrow freely? I doubt it. And if they're saying that Tobago is getting this large amount and their municipal corporations in Trinidad are not getting anything close, this is unfair. First thing first, how dare you compare the Tobago House of Assembly to a municipal corporation? Yes? So if they already have that thinking and they think that this is too much, they are not going to support this. I don't foresee them supporting this. And they're playing their politics right by hiding behind the PDP, allowing the PDP to speak for them and jumping on this whole wagon of, oh, Tobagonians don't want that. No, the UNC don't want Tobagonians to have that. So that is why I'm hoping that Tobagonians from all sides of the divide would look at this. Make a comparison between Act number 40 of 1996 and what is being proposed to us now. In so many different areas, I've heard members opposite. The member from Plymouth and the member from Belgarden, I heard them in their consultation and in their Facebook Live saying, oh, this is a good thing. I like this. This is a good, at so many different provisions that they like this clause or they like another clause, or they even went as far as for taking responsibility for some of the changes that were made, when in truth and in fact you had the PNM, the PDP individuals, Dr. Denise Sawyer Fat, Ingrid Melvin, so many people, even the chief secretary he submitted some points separately from the PNM. So everybody had their little say, and even the members of the committee, to bring this bill to where it is. And I say let's embrace the opportunity to get these wins and to make a leap in our journey to internal self-government.
You have a very realistic member of your constituency here. Somebody is asking, what's a section of the bill that you don't necessarily agree with, that you think needs to be tweaked?
The Fiscal Review Committee. I continue to harp on that. I've contacted the leader of the bench, letting her know that I want this to be changed on the parliamentary floor. I know there will be opportunities to make changes. When we spoke with QC Delano Bath and we looked at the makeup of the DRC, the Dispute Resolution Committee, we discussed and analyzed what's a better makeup for the committee. At that point in time, it was cabinet heavy, and the AG had recommended some reasons as to why it's done that way, but we said, okay, we need to have equal footing on the DRC and what we want done. The PNM recommended some changes, the PDP recommended some changes, individuals recommended changes, and we just really drilled down into that part. But we didn't do that much drilling in the FRC, and I think that the same principle needs to be adopted in that area, in that clause that deals with the FRC. It wouldn't hurt us to have equal number of members from Tobago, from the Tobago House of Assembly as from the cabinet. Right. I don't see any hurt or any harm in that, and I continue to push for that, and I hope to get that change on the parliamentary floor.
All right, so before we ask you to close out, I'm asking one more question from the members of the Tobago West constituency. This person is asking, in terms of Tobago's cultural identity, what does this self-governance bill have within it to preserve and propagate that? For example, in the Tobago Heritage Festival, I believe that's the question there that they're asking.
Okay. I think what this bill does is grant to Tobago the freedom, the authority, the responsibility to lead and direct its business in so many ways, in a larger number of areas than the Act 40 of 1996. Now we have a wider range of administrative jurisdiction, not just by the additional 11 miles, but also by passing on to the Tobago House of Assembly responsibility, exclusive administrative responsibility to develop policy and implement policy for over 30, 40 areas. Yes, including culture and community development and a host of other issues. So you have lawmaking power in some areas and you have exclusive administrative powers in some areas. We have removed cabinet control from a large number of areas also, and that gives to the people of Tobago the authority and the responsibility to chart its own course. For instance, some of the items that the Assembly has requested, it's now up to the Tobago House of Assembly, the Tobago Legislature, which is now a lawmaking body. We went from a body corporate, the Tobago House of Assembly that we have now, and now proposing a legislature, a lawmaking body where you could create your own bills and debate them and pass your laws for the areas that are under your remit. So a lot of our development that we complain, we're not getting this done or we're not getting that done because of Trinidad, will now rest on us. And we, as Tobagonians, both our leadership or secretaries in the Assembly and the people, have a responsibility to bring it home to where we want it to be. So I really embrace that increased autonomy and authority, but that comes with that responsibility to take Tobago to where we want to be. So you would see in the bill some of the items we're saying, but the Tobago legislature could make the law for that.
Right.
You could determine what you want for that. Even in getting greater representation and deepening the democracy and the oversight, the financial oversight, the administrative oversight, it's now up to the Tobago House of Assembly to develop its laws, its legislation, its rules, its regulation, to ensure that you get these things, just like is being done or was done in the Scottish Parliament. Yeah?
So as we close off, with respect to being a Tobagonian in the Parliament, you've spoken about it when we started talking about Friday last marking 11 years of active service as a politician, a frontline politician. There are those Tobagonians who see you simply as a PNM politician, a PNM woman, without realizing, I suppose, that when you go to Trinidad and you go to the Parliament, you are one, a Tobagonian woman, a younger person in the politics, and also you have to fight for the things that you want. Case in point, you're hoping to have the Reviews Commission tweet. How would you look at your representation as a Tobagonian in Parliament within the context that there are 41 and you're one of two representing the island of Tobago?
I let my success or the success of this government make the noise. Many people think politics, and especially many of the new politicians, think that it's a show. That in order to get work done or to make it look like you're doing work, you have to cuss the Parliament into submission. You have to say, if I don't get what I want, there'll be hell and brimstone down in the Parliament, or we'll take hell and brimstone to the Red House. And it doesn't work like that. We are all adults, elected to serve and represent our people. It's about discussion, it's about debate, it's about consultation, it's about research, it's about doing the work, staying up late in the night and spending many of your so-called off time in committees getting the work done. Every time I go to a committee meeting, I don't have to come out and post, hey, I was at a committee meeting and this is what we do. No. At the end of the day, we go to the cabinet. We go to the Finance and General Purposes Committee. We go to our different JSCs and get the work done. I feel a great sense of pride and pleasure as a young Tobagonian, as a little girl as they may call me. But I look at this little girl on the cabinet table, involved in decision-making process, making sure that we bring to Tobago that which was promised to Tobago over the years, the 2 ferries, as I would have mentioned, the expansion of the airport project that had been promised over 30 years now, and many members of the opposition said $2.1 billion, all this money, all you're spending on Tobago, that is too much money. We're getting it done. To see self-help being done in Tobago once again. Tobago was cut off from self-help. Now, as a member of this cabinet, Ayana Webster Roy, Shamfa Kojo, we are able to push and to lobby that for Tobagonians and Tobago to have access to these national programs. The agriculture program, where you can now get up to $300,000 for small farmers to modernize and to improve their farms, it's now available to Tobago for the first time. Agriculture access roads, and you could name it. The different strides that have been made in negotiating, in sitting at the cabinet table and representing Tobago issues. You now have Rocky Point. I remember being a little girl and hearing about what they're going and do at Rocky Point. It's happening now, where you now have hotel development now about to take place there. 2 little girls in cabinet making it happen. So the opposition has to say something. They may say we're young, they may say we're inexperienced, but when it comes to representing Tobago and making sure that Tobago gets its fair share on the cabinet table, look at all the development that has taken place in Tobago East and the access to opportunities for Tobago West. You look at the different infrastructure, you look at what is taking place. We are doing our work, and I'm pleased that we are able to get that work done and ensure that Tobago is represented, and Tobagonians now more than ever have access to the programs and the projects and the resources that are also available to Trinidad. Whenever a ministry launches a program or is doing something, obviously, okay, how could Tobago get in on that?
Right.
You know, and that is what we have been doing, ensuring that we get 2 bites of the cherry. Now, after internal self-government, some of that may change in some areas, but while we are here, we do our work and we let the work make the noise. Those who think that politics is about grandstanding and threatening to cuss people and threatening to fight people, we can't cuss these people to get in their votes on the parliamentary floor next week. You can't fight them either. So you can use all the words that you want to and threaten as much as you want to. That's not what's going to get you these votes. And we can't pass this internal self-government bills by ourselves here in Tobago. It has to be done at the level of the parliament. So we have to be mature, we have to be responsible, and we have to do the work to the best of our ability to get it done and to represent and serve our people. And that's what politics is about. It's not a show. It's not a show. Too many people think it is a show, and it's really not a show. It's about doing work, real work.
Unfortunately, I hope you guys find a way to put out some of the things that you do, because unfortunately, as the MP, and this is just the reality for us in Tobago, many people don't quite pay attention to the role of the MP and the work that you do, especially if you have, if you're a senior cabinet person or you have a ministerial portfolio. You get dismissed in a way that you shouldn't get dismissed until a time like now, where people are forced to see what the contributions are. But you all will figure that out as we go ahead. I'm going to allow you to speak to your constituents and get your last word in as we go.
Okay. Well, we are at that point in our nation's history, in Tobago's development, where it is time for us to make an important decision to support or not to support the internal self-government bills that are now before the parliament. You as Tobagonians have done the work. You have been at the consultations, you would have participated in the debates, submitted your different perspectives and opinions. You have been following the debate over the years, from 2007, 2008, all the way to this very day. And we have been waiting and working and looking at what is going to actually happen. We've seen our forefathers fight, we've seen our parents fight, and here we are today trying to bring it home. There are significant benefits and gains increase in budgetary allocation from 4.03 to 6.8%, proper representation through more assemblymen. You have a host of different items that we ought to be proud of in this new piece of legislation. More authority and autonomy and responsibility to drive development home for the people of Tobago. So I want to encourage you, let this not be a Sandals moment where we were finessed by the UNC and got caught up in opposition political expediency and we lost out on a good opportunity. Let's seize this opportunity and let's have not just a destination conversation, but also a journey conversation, getting to where we need to be, taking every single step, seizing every opportunity. I don't know of a better time, a better moment, a better prime minister, or a better leadership that will be able to bring this thing home and to grant to us the autonomy that we need at this point in time. Not just getting these positions passed the Joint Select Committee, but also getting the necessary votes in the Parliament. I encourage you to support this piece of legislation, these two pieces of legislation, and encourage our friends across the waters who are going to sit down next week in Parliament to vote to support internal self-government for Tobago. I'm thankful for the opportunity to serve and represent you, and may we embrace this opportunity, seize it, and bring this internal self-government to Tobago to fruition. So I thank you. Thank you for tuning in to Face to Face. God bless you, God bless Tobago, and may God richly bless our nation. Thank you.